So, welcome all to the Ukrainian Dynamics 365 and Power Platform User Group Meetup. Here we engage in insightful discussions on various technical topics about the Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform and associated technology stack. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed community leaders, Elizabeth Akinfeeva, Maxim Panemarov, and Valentin Kazenko for the invaluable contribution to the growth and development of our community. We would like to inform you that today's event is being recorded and you will be able to access the video later on our YouTube channel or the link in our Discord. Today's meetup will focus on the PCF controls in all types of apps by Andrew Butenko. Andrew?
Yep. Hello, everyone. Can you please give me controls because I can't share my screen?
Oh, yep, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Sweet.
Here you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's try it out and tell me what you see. Okay, this is slides. Let's try to switch to the. Okay, and now let's move the presentation to the proper screen. How in the world can I do it? Swap presenter. Oh no. Okay, let's try it slightly different way. I will stop sharing and I will reshare, but with the full presentation. Tell me if you see it.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Okie dokie. Let's minimize this and let's go through the presentation. So in my presentation today, I will talk about the PCF controls and specifics that you should take into consideration when you plan to build PCF controls and use it in different types of applications that we have under the hood in our wonderful Power Platform. So shortly about myself. My name is Andrew Butenko. Originally, I'm from Ukraine, Kiev, where I started my education and career. And with the time flow, I started to work as software developer. Thanks God, and I'm super appreciated that I'm in this wonderful world. With the time flow, I started to work as a back in time dynamic CRM developer. And after a few years, I achieved the Microsoft MVP award. And since that year, I keep being MVP. And at the moment, I have 14 consequent sequential MVP awards from Microsoft for business applications. Here on the slide, you can see my channels. I'm really sorry that I didn't update this little thing because all we know that there is no Twitter anymore. There is a social network that is now called X, but it is what it is. We have what we have. But the rest of links and icons, I believe, are still valid. So my blog, my GitHub, my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn. So if you would love to talk to me, if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out, subscribe to my blog, YouTube channel, and ping me on LinkedIn. I usually accept connections. So let's talk about Genda. This is how it looks like, and this is how I structured it. My background, for your understanding, I'm technical architect, but I'm really technical architect that is quite close to development because Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code are my daily tools, and I use it on daily basis. So today we will go through the history, availability of controls for different types of applications, the ways how configuration of controls is available in the different types of applications, like what aspects that should be taken into consideration when you're planning the development, what is available for a particular application, what is not available, uh, how different deployment of controls, and aspects that I've found really helpful when the particular control is when you are troubleshooting the particular control in the running environment. So not in harness, in environment. So let's start. History. It will be quite short and not a lot of things to be told actually. But initially, PCF control framework was called custom control framework, and it was a great step in evolving of that time dynamics for customer engagement application, and it allowed to create rich visualizations for the dynamics for customer engagement application. It was a huge step forward in visualization, because before, two options that we actually three options we had that time. It was either HTML and JS web resources that are still there, or Silverlight, rest in peace Silverlight applications, or it was embedding of external ASPX or other type of websites that was more really rare thing, but I saw such implementation. Sometimes it happened. So initially, uh, custom controls framework was released for public preview back in April 2019, and it was available only for model-driven applications. In October of the same year, controls reached general availability, and we started to have the fully supported possibility to use and distribute those controls and provide our customers the visualizations of the controls, and those controls were in supported mode by Microsoft. With the time flow and evolving of Canvas application and colliding of those two worlds, model-driven application and Canvas applications, Microsoft decided that it will definitely make sense to introduce the possibility to provide those wonderful possibilities to Canvas apps as well, not only to model-driven apps. And back in 2020 February, Canvas PCF Power Apps component framework reached the public preview, and it started to be possible to use pretty much the same controls in both type of applications, model-driven apps and Canvas apps. And that was really a great achievement, because the number of controls that was available out of the box from Canvas apps was quite limited. Even there were cool things like it was possible to compose different controls into like component libraries. But anyway, it was really cumbersome and hectic to use those component libraries on a full scale. That really limited the possibilities of reusability and flexibility for those approaches. Exposing of Power Apps component framework to Canvas app gave really great possibilities for apps builder without opening the Visual Studio and running the stuff, but just reusing the controls that were built by pro developers. Back in June 2021, after taking the feedback from the community and from developers, Microsoft finally released Power Apps component framework and made them general available for all the audience and possibility to distribute those controls and apps and provide those services for customers. And the logical step forward was the portal applications, or how it is called now, Power Pages. So back in March 2021, Microsoft released the possibility to use this pretty much the same controls in Portal as well. Those became available for public preview, but obviously not for the usage in the production scenarios. And finally, after getting another one feedback loop from community and from developers and from consultants, in 2022, in January, Power Apps component framework reached general availability. Since we have quite a small community over here on the call, if you have any kind of questions, you can just raise your hand and ask your question, then I will try to answer those. Does it work, guys? Okay, I see thumbs up. Sweet. Okay, let's move step forward. Availability. So that is great because at the moment, both field and dataset types of PCF controls are available for model-driven apps, canvas apps, and portal apps with some specifics, with some limitations, and that I will talk a little bit further in my presentation, but we can create our rich visualizations using whatever framework you would want, but obviously React is my choice, is my weapon of choice in this case. But it's possible to create controls for any type of application. So model-driven apps, canvas, and portal. Unfortunately, Microsoft still didn't expose the possibility of so-called unbound controls. So now, in order to create the control, we are limited either to field-bound controls or dataset controls. Microsoft, I know for sure, because we have those controls in the production, for example, in the field service, controls that are called unbound, that are technically not tied to any placeholder. But Microsoft still working on exposing of those controls to us and on tooling. Unfortunately, I do not have any timeline that I can share, but I heard that Microsoft is working on that possibility and exposing the unbound controls for developers as well. That will be another one great achievement that might address a few scenarios when at the moment developers are using workarounds in order to address this need. Okay, configuration of PCF controls in model-driven apps. Well, that is really cool because we have finally two ways to configure. If you're old school like me, you can use the classic editor, classic customization UI in order to configure the control. But with the time flow and evolving of the Maker portal, it started to be possible to configure controls from the modern UI as well. And it's keep evolving, and I really like the progress. So now sometimes I'm switching, I'm choosing to use the Maker portal just because it's much faster. And I believe that Microsoft plans to deprecate the classic customization UI and put all efforts to work and support only Maker portal. So eventually the classic UI is going away because I don't see that Microsoft put any investment into this classic UI portal. So for the field components and for grid components, it started to be possible to configure in both UI with one small star, as you may see. It's possible only for configuration of subgrids. So let's say if you want to make the configuration of the dataset component that is placed to the main form view, at the moment, as far as I know, there is no tooling under the Maker portal that would allow and would make it possible. At least maybe there is a way. I just was not able to find the way. So I used my old style skills, went to classic UI, opened the entity, and configured the custom controls over there. It is what it is. It is what it is. Not everything might be delivered like in the one attempt. Okay, let's go forward and configuration for the canvas. And the only way to configure canvas and put it on the form is the Maker portal. One small star in order to allow adding of PCF controls to the your canvas app, you have to activate the feature from the admin portal, and it's located under features of settings of the particular environment. So keep that in mind if you have like if you're following the classic ALM procedures, you should have at least two environments, development and production. Obviously, it is recommended to have the test or staging, something in between, but it depends on the project, on the size of the project, and the possibilities of the particular organization to host all of it. So when you plan to use Canvas apps in multiple environments, don't forget to go into a particular environment and activate that feature if that is a plan. Okay, portal. With the portal, it's really an interesting story. So for the field components, we can use two different ways. Actually, we can use the old way, and it means in order to activate the particular control for the portal, you have to go to the classic UI or to the Maker portal and add the control to the form that is bound to basic form or extended form inside the portal. Once that is done, you have to go to the particular settings of the form, and let me jump a little forward and add to the basic form metadata this setting, flip this flag basically, control style, and provide the attribute that should be shown. Once that change is done, the control, specifically the field control, can utilize whatever developer is developed inside the Visual Studio Code and pushed it to the environment. For grid components, and excuse me, let me make a step back. And there is alternative way that I found really interesting. Not a lot of time ago, the Maker portal for Portal. So make powerpage.microsoft.com, when it was released, it started to be possible to configure it directly using this data tab, go into particular entity and to particular form. And this takes all efforts from your side. The field is configured, and behind the scene, this form metadata record is created. So in order to make the life of the customizer easier and not to forget this trick. So in order to configure grid components, you still have to go to Classic UI or Maker portal. But in some outstanding cases, when you don't have the possibility to do that, let's say to reuse the component that is not bound to basic or extended form. If you want to use the control as is, you always can use liquid template text that allows to embed the control and use it there as a like native part of the of your whatever form. Okie dokie. That's the most interesting and the most crucial part of presentation. And this is what is related to development. I decided to put it as a table, actually as a matrix that has the types of applications at the top and available APIs that available for developers. There are more differences, but they are so tiny and not that crucial. Why I split canvas and custom pages that were released? Because custom page is kind of something in between. Consider custom page is a canvas app that lives just within the model driven app. So the really cool discovery that I did when I was building a custom page that utilizes the control, that some things that are not available to classic Canvas apps are available on custom page. So let's take a look at differences. Web API. Web API is natively available for model-driven apps, custom pages, and portals with one small trick that I will talk about a little just a few seconds later. So that's really a cool difference because from when you're building Canvas app, it's not possible to use the native web API because it's obvious. Sometimes you're building Canvas apps that are not environment aware, that do not have any connection to environment, just live there. So web API just doesn't make sense. It definitely makes sense for model-driven apps, and as I mentioned, for custom page, because custom page doesn't live outside of the environment. It's like native part of it. And portal. It's one of the fresh introduced things, but in order to utilize it, you have to configure the web API endpoints for the portal in order to expose those APIs to the PCF, particular PCF control. When I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking it from the following angle. Technically, portal is portal is an application, and when you're opening the portal, some privileges has to be granted to a user, pretty much the same like inside model-driven apps. So if the custom control tries to query the data using the web API, that user that opens the form or data set just doesn't have privileges to, that's obviously will lead to an exception because user doesn't have particular privilege. So pretty much the same for the portal. For the user, in order to query the data from the particular entity, you have to provide user the privileges through security roles, through teams, or through something else. Pretty much the same in the portal. If user wants to query the data using the custom controls, user has to have the privilege to query the data. Let's go forward. Utility. Utility is a great small namespace that actually doesn't provide a lot of things, but it's kind of really neat helper that provides the possibility to, let's say, open the lookup form, native lookup form of the model-driven app, or get the entity metadata. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it is not, but in some of my projects, especially that are quite complex, if you will, I utilize this feature. And this feature is available for model-driven apps and for custom pages. Obviously, for Canvas and for Portal, it doesn't make sense because the native lookup forms are not available for Canvas apps and not available for Portal. If there is a need to implement the lookup, it will be required either to rely on what Microsoft gave us as a standard lookup rendering control or write own. That is, just trust me, just trust my word, that is quite a struggle to build own lookup control that looks and feels like a native one. It's a super struggle. And to be honest, I failed it. I tried to do my best to build one, but it doesn't look even close to what to how it looks inside inside the model driven app. Device provides the possibility to access to basically your mobile device. I don't know how to interstate to hardware, I believe, because it provides the possibility to access to camera, to microphone, to some other things, and it allows to upload the files. And those features, are available for model-driven apps, because model-driven app, not all the users are using the browser to open model-driven app. We have wonderful Power Apps, how it's called, Power Apps application that allows to use pretty much the same model-driven app or Canvas app just from your mobile. I worked with it. I did a few projects with it, and to be honest, it's quite impressive how Microsoft allowed to run pretty much the same application, the same way how you build it for the browser or for your Outlook application. It works pretty much the same on the mobile device with some aspects, but I was really impressed with the possibilities. For the Portal, doesn't make sense because Portal pretty much doesn't know and shouldn't know anything about your camera or your microphone or your file system at all. So these features are not exposed, and even more. That's interesting thing that I discovered when I was building few controls for the Portal. When the feature flag is enabled for the control, when you are trying to use the control, even it doesn't use those features, your Portal will just throw an error at the very top of your Portal form and won't render the control the way you want. So if there is intention to use something from device, you will have to split controls between your model-driven apps, Canvas apps custom page, and Portal, because Portal even won't render the control if one of those features, specifically device, is enabled. So just keep that in mind. And dataset operations. It's quite an interesting subject. So Microsoft, specifically for data set operation, exposes additional methods like open the record, create a new record, update record, and so on. And those functions and that functionality is exposed to model-driven apps, Canvas apps, and custom pages, but not exposed for the Portal. Microsoft, as far as I read the documentation, Microsoft still thinks should they open and expose that possibility for the Portal. But as far as I read, I was not able to find any timeline. Sometimes it might be quite helpful instead of writing on mechanisms or using Web API to create or update records, it can do it natively for you. And that actually works just in an amazing way in model-driven apps and Canvas apps and custom pages. Let's move the step forward. Deployment. So deployment for different types is quite an interesting thing. It has a few common steps, but in order to make your deployment easier and faster, keep in mind the following steps and try to recall the differences between different types of applications where controls are used. Okay, the very first and the easiest one, model-driven app. If you want to update the control and apply change that you developed, first thing first, you have to increment controls version. Otherwise, even you will use PCF push and your change will be reflected inside your development environment. After promoting change to your upstream environment, those changes won't be reflected. And this is because of this because of this controls version that can be located in the manifest file of the particular PCF control. Really crucial step. Never forget this. Then depends on how you prefer to deploy controls. I prefer, this is my weapon of choice, PCF push, because it does everything for you. It creates the holding solution. It adds the control. It adds the publisher. So it removes all the pain in the back that we used to have in the early days of Power Apps component framework, when we had to create old solution, run some magic scripts in order to compose that solution, and then go to environment and manually upload that control. That was quite time consuming and sometimes not logical, and multiple steps usually leads to mistakes and losing of the time. And the very last step before trying the control inside the environment, just empty the cache and reload the browser. Voila! You should see your change inside model-driven app. Okay, how does it look in Canvas apps? The way is this way is a little more complicated, and even Microsoft declared that they have removed the possibility of the next steps. My last experience that I literally used a few days back tells the opposite. So if you have a need to deploy the updated changes into your Canvas app, these are steps that you will have to perform. So first one, remove control that is used inside the Canvas app and publish an app. It's really painful, especially when you have the multiple bindings on the control that rely on some data and so on and so on. When it's just the control that hangs over there and does something, not a big problem. In my case, I had multiple bindings, so this is really pain in the back. Deletion of the control every single time and rebinding it again. It's really time consuming, and this is not super pleasant experience. So I'm trying to stay away out of this thing, and I'm trying to do those publication as less time as I could, but obviously sometimes it's required. Next step, increment controls version. Another one crucial step, like we had in model-driven apps, always do it. Don't forget about it. Then PCF push command in order to bring PCF control into your Dataverse environment, because otherwise we won't be able to use it in Canvas app. It not always sound logical, but it is what it is. Then add control to your Canvas app, rebind your bindings, your inputs of the control, and add handlers if you have any handlers on the control, and publish an app. And only after that, you will see the updated version of the control inside your Canvas app. The very last one, and that is a little bit easier comparing to Canvas, Portal. The same thing, increment controls version, PCF push, and empty Portal's cache and reload the browser. So pretty much the same how you see it inside model-driven app. I don't know why Microsoft has these additional steps specifically for Canvas apps, but that's what we have. Let's move forward. Troubleshooting, another one crucial subject. In my early days, being the developer of Power Apps component framework components, in order to see change, I used just publishing of the component. That always took a lot of time. After I discovered Fiddler for myself, it saved just tremendous amount of time for me. And instead of publishing and testing the change inside the environment and wasting time that will be taken for publishing, I started to use Fiddler. And if you're still not using Fiddler, I highly recommend you to invest time into mastering that skill. That will save a lot of time and nerves to you. Sometimes Fiddler is not the greatest application. I found out that, for example, if I'm troubleshooting something using the Fiddler, um, some of my messages in other applications are not getting delivered. For example, Outlook emails are not coming through, or my messages over Teams are not coming through. I don't know why it happens. I didn't look under the hood, but sometimes it's happened. So when you're doing it, just turn on your Fiddler when you are not actively troubleshooting. It's just my experience. As a potential alternative, there are the browser extensions that pretty much do the same thing, and you can use it. But Fiddler, quite a great tool that I found really helpful, and at the moment I will stick to it. So how to configure the Fiddler for the model-driven app. Excuse me. So all you have to do is to configure autoresponder, and this is the pattern that you will have to replace with your local bundle and bind it to it. So it has the publisher. So let's say if you create the publisher for your PCF control, I don't know, UG Ukrainian Power Platform UG rocks. So you will have to place it here, and then my wonderful PCF control instead of PCF name placeholder. How different Canvas app? For Canvas app, as you may see, the URL that you will handle and replace, like redirected to your local hard drive, slightly different. PCF Controls publisher 2 times. I don't know why, but this is how Microsoft implemented. Then PCF name, and then publisher again PCF name and bundle.js. Unfortunately, it won't work as is, and I spent some time in Googling, finding out what is wrong with it. And the answer was that this thing has to be performed inside the Fiddler. We basically had to access, it has some kind of policies inside the application itself, access control, allow region, and in order to allow picking up and replacing the content, you have to include this code that you can actually find online or ask me inside the Fiddler script over here. And the very last one, Portal. It's really interesting why Microsoft uses different URLs for every single application and why not unify it. I believe there are some kind of historical reasons for that. but it is what it is. So autoresponder, you have to configure to autoresponder to your portal / PCF web resource / GUID. I was trying hard to figure out what the GUID is. It is not the component ID. It's not the their component ID and component ID unique. I was trying hard to figure out where this GUID is coming from. Unfortunately, I was not able to. The only thing that I didn't check is that setting inside the attribute metadata configuration that we were talking about earlier. Maybe that's the GUID, that's the key setting, but I didn't check it. But how to find this URL? You're just running your profile, you're reloading the browser, cleaning the cache, and you're figuring out where the URL there. You're inspecting the output. When the output meets your control bundle, that's pretty much it. You figure it out. You can now handle it. And that's pretty much it about my presentation. So if you have any kind of questions, maybe not related directly to the subject that I was talking about, feel free to ask.
It looks like as for now we have no questions, so it will be a question from my side. So Andrew, you mentioned the Fiddler. Maybe there's some other tools that you can suggest, like to speed up the work? Maybe some interesting plugins that you use with XRM Toolbox, or some ChatGPT to generate something for PCF, anything that can help.
Oh, that is a brilliant question. Thank you. So obviously I'm heavily utilizing XRM Toolbox, and specifically in the context of development of PCF, I heavily rely on Dataverse REST Builder when it is needed. It's really a cool extension from my fellow Guido, and it allows to easily build the web API queries without guessing the syntax, using the really simple and intuitive design. Cool thing about it, that it not only provides the possibility to build the query and get the URL itself, it provides the code snippets that can be used either inside JavaScript or TypeScript. As well, you can utilize it for building of queries for Power Automate, Flow, and so on. That's one thing, one tool. Second, my favorite tool is obviously the Ribbon Workbench. It's not directly related to the subject of what we discussed, but since you brought the question, that's my second favorite. And the third is SQL for CDS from another MVP fellow, Mark. Just wonderful, especially for people who is just getting into Power Platform world, from the world, let's say, of classic development and SQL queries. It's much easier for people just to write SQL queries and find the result set just pretty much like you can do it inside SQL Management Studio.
Okay, thanks a lot.
In regards to frameworks that can be used specifically to build UIs, I'm trying to rely on the React and Fluent UI. React and Fluent UI. Why Fluent UI is my framework of choice? Because pretty much any kind of application that you will see nowadays in Microsoft stack are built based off of that framework. SharePoint, Outlook Online, Dataverse, even Azure. I start seeing that Azure portal starts picking up and utilizes the Fluent UI as well. But sometimes some components are not available, so I'm open to alternative frameworks like Genda UI. That is unfortunately is not free. It requires to pay some money, but if you crucially need some component and you don't want to reinvent the wheel and develop from the scratch, that's your go-to. They have a set of wonderful controls that can be utilized. For example, Gantt chart or Material UI. That is quite cool, but in order to style it and tailor it to the standards of Fluent UI, to say, it might take some time. Another one cool framework that I started to look at is ND. It's the Chinese-based, don't be scared, but Chinese-based React framework that provides a lot of controls. And one of controls that I'm currently using in my project is autocomplete. Unfortunately, Microsoft still didn't provide the normally working autocomplete in like as part of Fluent UI. So when I have the autocomplete need, I'm going to end D and picking up the autocomplete from there. Okay, I got a question. Have you tried ChatGPT for PCF development? Does it help somehow in any cases? Yes, I tried it once, and specifically for routine operation that machine can do easily. I asked when I had to build the control that has multiple inputs. I just described that I want to build the PCF control with this, and this attribute, and it generated the config manifest file beautifully. That I was able easily to reuse it and not going through the tedious exercise of manual entering and editing the XML file. With few small tweaks, it worked. So yeah, but I use ChatGPT only for that. I find that sometimes ChatGPT really hallucinating and generates something that that is not real. So when you are trying to rely on ChatGPT, especially when you are trying to decide and solve some kind of complex query, I would recommend to be aware that sometimes it's really hallucinating and generates something that really doesn't exist or it doesn't work.
Yeah, thanks a lot for like super detailed answer. I guess it was really helpful for everyone. It looks like we have no other questions, so I would say that we're going to end this meetup.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for getting in touch with us. So thanks everyone for joining us. As usually, we will upload the recording to our YouTube channel, so you will be able to view it again or share with friends later on. Have a nice evening and be safe. Bye-bye.
It's boring for me, yes. But yeah, time difference. Guys, stay safe, please. Stay safe.